Hello and welcome to another Courage Skyline Talk. Today we will talk about marketing with artificial intelligence and more precisely about AI ethics in marketing. And the video today is in English because again, I have a very special guest today, James Brusseau. James Brusseau is a philosopher and professor for business ethics and AI ethics at Pace University in New York City and University of Trento, Italia. And I think, James, this is where you are right now, right?
Well, I am in fact not telling the truth. I'm not at Pace University. I am in Italy at the moment. Correct, yes.
Yes. And James, you have been exploring the human experience of artificial intelligence in privacy, freedom, authenticity, and personal identity within the field of philosophical ethics. You have been at conferences, over 35 conferences. You have been to media presentations. You are a global expert in applied ethics, and companies with AI at the core of their operations ask your expertise to really come and support them in the company. James, it's really an honor to have you here today because AI ethics is such a relevant topic in the moment, and you're such an expert in this field. And I mean, in the moment, particularly, even in the Silicon Valley, everybody's talking about ethics. And if it comes to it, I mean, I listened to a video by Sam Altman and Friedman and Elon Musk originally, right? He was one of the founders of OpenAI, then left OpenAI because he is a fan of open source, and OpenAI, one can say, is not really open source anymore. Microsoft is invested with 30%, and therefore Musk opened his own open source AI company. I think it's called XI, something like this. And I mean, comparing these two, you as an expert, open source versus maybe not open source, I mean, what is better?
Right. It's an extremely difficult question and complicated for sure. I think that perhaps one way to think about that is it's not so much that one is better or worse, but instead that open source orientation and closed source orientation correspond with two different sort of attitudes toward artificial intelligence. What open source does is it makes, as the name indicates, it leaves the data that is being used to train these models and the algorithms that are being used to direct them and make them function. It leaves much, or perhaps in extreme case, all of that information available for people to use, which is very good because that stimulates innovation and allows people to take work that has been done and apply it elsewhere to, let's say, healthcare, which is generally a positive thing. But it's very bad also because it allows people who might be perhaps interested in fraud or deep fake exploitation, it allows them to take this same data and information and use it perhaps for malevolent purposes. So I think the open source, it gives you more positive and more negative. Whereas by contrast, what closed source does, what's happening when people put up barriers between the general public and this information is, it allows the companies to control access to that information. And it means on the one side, you get less innovation, less use of the innovation for in other fields. But on the other side, it's more cautious, it's more safe. You don't have to worry so much about these advanced tools being used to rob from people's bank accounts and so on. So I think open source and closed source, it's not better and worse so much as the attitude you have about AI and innovation. Do you want more faster? If you do, then perhaps open source is your orientation. If you're more cautious and concerned, then perhaps closed source is the way that you should lean in this discussion. This complicated discussion.
Yeah, I know. I mean, with this video, we cannot answer all these questions. I know, maybe another time. But thank you. Very, very interesting. So in the end, it's kind of good even that both exist in parallel. And okay. And very interesting for me as a marketer, really. I mean, marketing is scaling in the moment due to artificial intelligence, which is very good opportunities for us, but also the risks are increasing. And I noticed that you put a high focus really on AI ethics in marketing and telling people about the risks and opportunity. Why is this? Why do you put such a high focus in this communication field?
Right. One reason, the leading reason actually, as an academic, is because on the one side, as you say, marketing and innovation in these areas are spots where artificial intelligence is being optimized at a rapid pace. There are funds to support research and so on. But on the other side, even though there's a lot of attention and a lot of focus on and a lot of concentration on these advances, most people come to questions about marketing and artificial intelligence from a sort of neutral perspective. If you talk about things like, say, abortion and privacy or climate change and artificial intelligence, a lot of people start out the discussion with a sort of an emotional attachment to one side or the other, a debate. But in marketing, let's say we're talking about something like, should you go see the Oppenheimer film or the Barbie film this weekend? I mean, no one.
That was a big topic in the US. I
right,
heard.
right, that's the topic of conversation.
You know, Oppenheimer compared with Barbie. It's amazing.
These dilemmas. But no one has a lot of emotional baggage. Right. So people can just talk about this without feeling committed to one side or the other. They can explore questions like, well, if we're going to see advertising for one or the other movie, and this advertising takes advantage of personal information about our lives and directs us to one or the other movie, do we feel as though we're being exploited or used on the one side? Or instead, do we feel as though we are being served and being directed toward the kind of entertainment we want? It's hard to answer that question, but in the world of advertising, most people enjoy talking about it and don't have these kinds of emotional connections. So that makes it an excellent field, actually, for research and for investigation. It's a place where people can talk honestly with each other about privacy, about their freedom and their determination of what they want to do, and learn a little bit about how artificial intelligence works and what kinds of ethical issues arise around it. So that's the main reason I got interested in privacy, because there's so much artificial intelligence involved and there's so little emotion. And people can talk about it in interesting and ways which don't commit them to one or another position.
Interesting. And you even developed, so to say, kind of a workshop, because it's really, in German, we say a Steckenpferd, a really personal interest for you to teach people about this aspect together with a consultancy Overflow. And this workshop is actually companies can hire you or the workshop and educate their people internally, and can even invite guests, so and learn about the importance of AI ethics in marketing. And I had a look at the agenda. It looked really very interesting to me. I will definitely join the workshop, or let's say join. I mean, yeah, we find a way to communicate it. And I saw that you put a particular focus on privacy as part of the workshop, on explainability, and on fairness. Why is that? Why, I mean, with the first one, privacy.
Sure. Well, just to step back just for a second, I think that the reason for the workshop is that artificial intelligence, as we all know, is galloping so quickly into our lives that almost no one has had a chance to catch up sort of intellectually and ethically and humanly with what is happening. And certainly the politicians and lawyers and those who make laws and regulations have not had a chance to catch up. So one of the things we're trying to do with the workshop is we're trying to provide people with just a broad sense of what kind of human, ethical, and by implication, what kinds of legal issues are going to be arising surrounding the use of this technology. Not so much so that they can answer questions, but at least so that people who are involved in this field in marketing, at least they have some sense of what kinds of questions are going to be coming at them, and how those questions can be framed for one or another kind of response. So that's the idea of the workshop. And then when you talk about, obviously that kind of workshop could go on for it can go on for a year, right? We're talking about all the things that are happening. But in this field, there are three general areas where human dilemmas arise. And one area is sort of the ethics of me, that is things that are about the individual. And these are questions about individual privacy and their personal information. And that connects with their autonomy and their self-determination. So for example, going back to the case of Oppenheimer versus Barbie, well, if someone knows a lot about you, they can perhaps manipulate you to go see one or the other movie. But as we said, maybe that's good. Maybe that helps in a certain sense, that serves your self-determination. So one answer, right? I mean, if it leads you to the movie that you really want to see, that you will enjoy most, maybe that's not a bad thing. So that's sort of one area of ethics, this ethics about me and how I live in the world. And as I say, there's the opportunity to find things that I want, but there's this risk of being exploited or being manipulated. And then the second area is the ethics of us, of you, I, and everybody. And that corresponds with this idea of fairness. And what's going on there is that the kinds of conclusions that artificial intelligence draws are based entirely upon the data that is used to feed the machine, to feed the train. And it's very difficult in real life, in the real world, to get data about individuals which corresponds perfectly with society and in ways that we want society to be. So for example, we just know from psychological studies that if you put up an advertisement for seeking high-level executives, we know that men and women who are equally qualified, men are more likely, as an aggregate, right, as the whole study, are more likely to tap on that ad, click on that ad, than women. Now, what does that mean? That means that what the artificial intelligence is going to learn is that it should show this ad to men more than women. Now that doesn't mean that the artificial intelligence is back there thinking, oh, women are bad, men are good. No, that's not it. It's just the data is instructing the machine to do that. However, many of us might believe that, in fact, even though men and women tap it or click at disproportionate rates, that those advertisements nevertheless should be shown more or less equally across genders and races and so on. So fairness is the study or the investigation of how those kinds of questions come up. And then finally, just very quickly, explainability. This is the ethics not of me and not of us, but of the machine. And this is broad questions about whether or not we want to or can even know how the machine reaches the conclusions it does. As artificial intelligence advances, as algorithms become more complicated, more layered, more is going on faster, it becomes harder and harder for us as human beings with our biological minds to follow and understand how the machines are reaching their conclusions. So then we might want to ask, well, does that matter? Do we need to know why the machine predicts one thing or another? And that might matter going back to the case of fairness, because if you want to see why a certain ad is being driven at men more than women, if the reasoning or the reason for that disproportion might make a difference in how you understand what is fair or not fair. And on the other hand, if you don't know what's going on, it's very difficult to draw conclusions about fairness. So
Yeah.
those three areas, the ethics of me, the ethics of us, and the ethics of the machine, compose the kind of background knowledge that we believe people should have in order to effectively confront the kinds of humanistic dilemmas that are and will increasingly arise as this technology proliferates through marketing and innovation.
Okay, very interesting, very interesting. So this workshop is actually not only for marketing, it's also for PR, I assume, people, communication experts overall, because in PR, I mean, you can be really get information. When I think about the election coming up in the US, you can really manipulate people, right?
Right.
The question of manipulation come up again. So very, very interesting. So you...
Right. Yes, fascinating. And we tried to use in the workshop, we tried to use case studies so that we can have discussion, sort of engage on certain things that are happening. But yes, the workshop applies to anyone who is using artificial intelligence to interact with individuals and help them make decisions, guide decisions, but which also means open the risk of manipulation and so on. So across that entire field, the workshop would prove valuable, we believe.
Okay, very interesting. Yeah, for everybody watching here, we will put a link who you can contact to get to know more about the workshop and where to book it and further details. James, thank you very much. I mean, we could go on talking for hours, I guess, on so many interesting topics, and the speed things are evolving in the moment. Maybe we will have another video together with you just for those watching, because we at Courage also decided to, of course, as being marketing is one of our, we want to keep you informed about what's going on in artificial intelligence the best way we can. And there are so many topics like artificial intelligence and manipulation, artificial intelligence and copyrights and regulation. So there will be more videos coming up frequently. Stay tuned here, ring the golden bell, you don't miss any video. And James, anything from your side, any thought you want to share with the people watching outside on artificial intelligence, what to watch out in particular?
So I would say the most important guidance I can give is that curiosity is good. None of us fully understand exactly what is happening and how things will advance.
If you say this, that scares me, because I know nothing.
Well, okay, but I don't think we should be scared. I think we should be curious. I think we should be engaged and involved. It's everyone, I believe that everyone will be involved, whether they like it or not. And curiosity is a good way to understand to some degree, whatever is possible, to the degree that is possible, what is happening around us.
That's a very nice recommendation. I like that. Thank you very much for your time, and see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Connie.